What if the ground was made up of trampolines? Ben, you want to lead us off?
Sure. So to set up our sort of parameters for this, we kind of said that, all ground, like inside buildings, outside buildings, everything is going to be trampolines. Walls like our anchor points.
Yeah, it's like our standard definition of ground for all the other ground questions we've had.
Exactly, yeah.
Well, in case they haven't listened to those, basically anything that's meant to be, walked on, the flat part. What you think of when you think ground, what do you immediately think of?
Things you stand on.
That includes like the road and like lawns and the floor in your house and stuff like that.
We have to define what the ground is allowed on this podcast for some reason. And the other important thing is that we had to figure out what the area of influence for the trampoline ground was. So as an example, if you're on a trampoline and you can double bounce someone, we don't want that to be just the entirety of the trampoline, because then just nothing would ever happen. So we sort of said that even though this kind of breaks physics, when you're at a spot on the trampoline, your area of influence is kind of like a standard trampoline area. So you can't double bounce someone from 20 feet away. It's kind of, whatever, I don't know, how big is a trampoline? 8 feet across? 10 feet across?
I found 12 feet standard
12 feet?
for
Sure. So 12
outdoors.
feet. I'll say that.
Yeah.
So anyway, I sort of looked at sort of how your daily life is going to go. And honestly, a lot of it is going to be pretty much the same. There are definitely some differences, don't get me wrong, but most of just the activities you do are going to be relatively the same because you're not moving around that much while you do them. But the movement is kind of where things get a little haywire. One thing that does get very different sort of early on in your day, I think showering is incredibly hazardous now. Because slipping in the shower is already a problem for some, it's not a common problem, but it's a thing that happens. And if the shower is, think about walking on a trampoline, how it's moving underneath you. If that is then wet, I feel like that's just going to be a very dangerous situation. So I think baths are going to be very much in style.
It'll do less damage when you fall though.
Well, we're going to get to that.
Okay.
Yeah. I will also say, Ben, I don't know how familiar you are with having trampolines, but if it rains and you go on a trampoline, that thing is the slickest motherfucker you've ever seen.
We're going to loop back around to that one too.
Well, my.
To be fair, I don't know. Did we say that it was actually going to be trampoline material?
Yeah.
That's what I assumed.
Okay, well, if it's trampoline material, then yeah, you cannot fucking shower. At all.
This ain't some bad CGI where everything's bouncy.
Right.
I don't know.
So otherwise, most of your getting started on your day stuff is going to be kind of the same. One place where things get a little funky is driving. So cars are going to be different. Because cars, as you know, have suspension systems. They're designed to keep the movement of a car, stable as it goes across flat ground. But the problem is, now the ground is also kind of a suspension system. So I don't know. I don't think cars have suspension anymore, because then you're going to get into some weird like cascading resonance scenario and just flip your car anytime you try to move it. Where the trampoline will bounce and then I'll spit off the suspension and you'll start low riding,
Yeah, if you're going downhill, then you reach the low point. Isn't it going to bounce you back up?
Well, not even just that. So think about braking. So when you brake, most of that kinetic energy is going down into the ground. So the trampoline is going to react.
But that's horizontal movement, right?
But even still, that means it's going to sort of bounce you forward and then as you brake and then back once you're stopped. And beyond that, if you are, say you are driving near people and they're slamming on the brakes, they're going to be in your area of influence as you put all this kinetic energy into the ground.
Yeah, driving a car driving past is going to potentially launch you,
right?
Which makes sidewalks problematic.
Yeah, exactly. Sidewalks have to be much wider and
away from the street.
And bikes, I don't think can share the road anymore.
But also just a big truck, just drives between you
Oh yeah.
You could just
And
shoot
then
up.
Yeah.
Your cars aren't super good when they're not in contact with the ground in general terms.
Right. So in general, I just don't even know like if cars can be a thing anymore. I feel like we may have to go to a more public transit system just to have fewer giant things, fucking up everything around them as they roll through. Because, like, public transit is at least controllable.
Can I propose a solution?
Oh, please do.
So, people don't do this yet because, one, it's going to be it's awesome, but trampolines are limited in size. But if you have, like, infinite space on trampoline, no one thinks about horizontal movement with jumping.
Mm-hmm.
So, if you have, like a little bit of a hang glider type thing or, like, a wingsuit, and you can, like, get a little bit of glide going on your jumps...
Ooh,
you can probably get some
idea.
good distance going.
That's cool.
This is an idea.
Probably pretty dangerous.
The jumpsuit is the wingsuit is much more hilarious to me, but I think it works way worse.
Yeah, I think it's not going to work very well. And so you say it might be more dangerous, but I don't know how much like more dangerous it would be than...
It'd be safer than cars.
Right, yeah. So... there will have to be some solution. I do like this wingsuit / hang glider idea. I don't know how practical it is, but it is very fun to imagine, like most things involving trampolines. So our next little thing I thought about, fitness. So one of the first things I thought was that people are just going to be more fit because they're going to burn a lot more calories just moving around. And I looked up, and for a 150-pound adult, if you jump on a trampoline for 10 minutes, it apparently burns about 42 calories. I saw some things that were like propaganda from those like Sky Zone style trampoline parks that were saying that you could burn like 1,000 calories an hour. But I also saw a bunch of stuff that was just saying that that's completely wrong. So I'm going with this 42 calories thing.
I don't think you can burn 1,000 calories an hour.
Yeah,
like
I don't
if you're
think
running
that
a marathon.
works. Yeah, no. So 10 minutes jumping on a trampoline apparently burns about 42 calories. There was some variance in numbers I was seeing, but that's, close enough. 10 minutes walking burns actually also 42 calories. So it turns out there's not really a difference there just in terms of like caloric stuff. Although one weird thing, so I did look up, the world record for trampoline bouncing, and complete grain of salt here. This is not from like Guinness. This was the most reliable one I could find. Apparently Guinness doesn't do like longest time bouncing on trampoline because I think it's just really hard to like regulate what qualifies as bouncing on a trampoline.
I found a highest jump from
Yeah, I saw
Guinness.
highest and like most flips and stuff like that, but not just like length of time bouncing. The world record, according to the one that I found, was like an hour and 30 minutes, which seems low if you're only burning as many calories as you do walking, because I can walk longer than an hour and 30 minutes.
Well, I mean, it's not about how much like physical energy you're expending. I think it's your fucking legs. Your legs are gonna give out, man.
I guess. Yeah.
Oh, everyone's gonna have really gross and jacked up legs.
So I thought about that too. So one of the fun things I thought about is that people's calves are just going to be excellent in general. And then one of the things, so one of my favorite like little tidbits about like the Middle Ages was that if you were like really fat, it was assumed that you were wealthy because you could afford to eat a bunch. So now I think if you don't have really good calves, we're going to assume that you're like high class because you don't have to like ever move around or anything.
Because you can afford that hang glider.
You can afford that sick ass hang glider, exactly. So now looping back to something that came up earlier, injuries. So just quick aside, while looking up like injury numbers, I found the excellent Wikipedia page, toilet-related injuries and deaths. I was looking for things about falling, but that came up. And the subtitles for this page are accidental injuries, injuries caused by animals, self-induced injury, exploding toilets, historical deaths, urban legends, and in fiction. Which is great, but that's entirely unrelated. I just had to share that because the fact there's a Wikipedia page for toilet-related injuries and deaths is wonderful. But yeah, apparently globally, like 646,000 fatal falls occur per year. It's the second leading cause of unintentional death after road traffic injuries. And in the US, falls cause about 8 million emergency room visits per year, which is like 21.3% of all emergency room visits, which is the leading cause. And my first thought was, well, this is going to be better because you're going to fall and bounce. But at the same time, if you're like moving and fall and bounce, like you're going to keep bouncing. And I think you can get a lot of like twisted things, and like it's probably going to be fewer. You're going to get fewer like fractures and stuff, which is a good thing, but more like twisted ankles, like neck injuries, stuff like that from people like falling and like bouncing around weirdly,
like bouncing into a wall.
Right? Yeah. The injuries are different, and probably on average,
this is the most cartoony thing to be happening all the time. It's like,
yeah.
oh, bounce. Oh, fuck. Boom.
Right.
Oh, damn
so like,
it.
I think injuries. I think there's more injuries total, but less severe.
What would like falling downstairs be like?
I thought about just stairs in general. I think it really tricky. Falling downstairs, I think is going to be absolutely terrifying, and you might
hilarious. Hilarious to an observer.
The problem is that most staircases at the end have like a wall, and you're going to hit the bottom and just bounce up into that wall, which isn't great. And then finally, as Marcus brought up, weather. So rainy days, it's going to be pretty hard to go outside just because slick trampolines, not good. If it's snowy or icy, I think you just cannot leave where you live. I think you just can't. Imagine an icy trampoline. You will die.
Yeah,
actually, I don't think you'll be able to get going far enough to actually die. I think you will just you'll die because you'll like immediately fall down and then slide out into the middle of the road, and no one will be on it, but you just won't be able to get back to anywhere that's not outside.
Yeah, I think a snowplow will definitely not work. Because if it snows, the weight of the snow is going to push all the, like, wherever the furthest parts of the trampoline is, like, down the most.
I mean,
and everything's going to be reverse hills.
Yeah, I guess so. In our situation, the trampoline is, like, indestructible, so it can't break.
Yeah,
so
it won't break.
It won't break, but it'll deform a lot due to the weight.
Actually, hold on. If it snows, aside from the slickness, is it easier to walk around, actually?
I would think so,
yes.
Yeah.
I think so,
You just get like a pair of snowshoes, you can walk on top.
So I guess if you have enough snow that you don't have to actually walk on the trampoline anymore, I think you're good. That's when you go do stuff.
Real estate prices in Buffalo skyrocket overnight.
Where you can almost live normally.
Well, normally for them.
Right, well, yeah, you're still in Buffalo. Hey, Buffalo, love you. I've never been to Buffalo. It's probably a terrible place.